The silver spires of the United Nations Extraterrestrial Relations Complex gleamed in the morning sun as Dr. Jessica Miller adjusted her blazer one final time. 20 years of military tactical training had taught her the importance of appearances, and today's presentation needed to be flawless. The fate of humanity's integration into the galactic community hung in the balance. Dr. Miller, her assistant, Thomas Reed, appeared at her office door. The Zaxrith delegation has entered Earth's atmosphere. Their shuttle will dock in 15 minutes. Jessica nodded, her practiced smile masking the calculated analysis running through her mind. The Zaxrith, with their massive eyes set wide apart and their delicate, almost deer-like features, were the perfect first contact species. Their herbivorous nature made them inherently trusting, almost naive by human standards. They'd never evolved the need to understand predatory behavior, which made them uniquely unsuited to recognizing it in others. The presentation room had been carefully curated. Walls displayed images of Earth's most impressive agricultural achievements, vertical farming complexes in Singapore, regenerative agriculture projects in Kansas, and the crowning achievement, the atmospheric scrubber farms of New Zealand. Not a single image hinted at humanity's other activities. As the delegation filed in, Jessica observed their movements with the same intensity she'd once used to track targets through dense jungle. The Zaxrith moved like gazelles, each motion fluid but ready to spring away at any moment. Their leader, Barthox, extended both hands in their traditional greeting gesture. "Welcome to Earth," Jessica said, matching their gesture perfectly. "We're honored to share our world's achievements with the Galactic Confederation." The presentation began smoothly. Jessica guided them through humanity's agricultural history, carefully emphasizing their development of sustainable farming practices. She watched their large eyes grow wider as she displayed statistics about Earth's biodiversity preservation efforts. "Fascinating," Barthox commented, his translator rendering his chirping voice into smooth English. "Your species shows remarkable dedication to maintaining ecological balance. But these nature preserves, why maintain such large areas purely for other species?" Jessica's heart rate didn't even flicker as she delivered the prepared response. "We believe in being stewards of our world's natural heritage. Every species has its place in the ecosystem." Behind her, Security Officer Marcus Reynolds maintained his professional stance, but his eyes never stopped tracking the visitors' movements. Like Jessica, he understood the delicate dance they were performing. Every human in the room had been carefully selected and extensively briefed. No one would mention the hunting lodges dotting those same preserves, or the military training grounds hidden beneath the canopy of national parks. The delegation seemed particularly impressed by the Central Park Restoration Project. Jessica led them through the holographic display of the park's carefully maintained ecosystems, explaining how humans had learned to create green spaces within their urban environments. "Your young ones," Barthox noted, watching a group of children playing frisbee. "They seem so coordinated, so aware of their surroundings. Our younglings typically require more protection. We encourage physical activity and environmental awareness from an early age." Jessica replied smoothly, not mentioning how those same skills had evolved from humanity's hunting past. The children's game of frisbee was, after all, just target practice refined into recreation. As the presentation concluded, Barthox's report to the Confederation was already taking shape. His species would see exactly what humanity wanted them to see: a civilized agricultural society ready to join the galactic community. They wouldn't notice how the building's security systems tracked their every movement, or how each human in the room unconsciously maintained optimal positioning for both defense and rapid response. "We look forward to a long and peaceful relationship with Earth," Barthox announced as the delegation prepared to leave. "Your species' dedication to preservation and cultivation is admirable." Jessica maintained her diplomatic smile as she watched them depart. Only once their shuttle had cleared Earth's atmosphere did she allow herself a small sigh of relief. Phase 1 was complete. Humanity had successfully hidden its predatory nature behind a carefully constructed facade of civilization. They really don't see it, do they? Marcus commented quietly, standing beside her at the observation window. They can't, Jessica replied, watching the shuttle's contrail fade into the blue sky. Their evolutionary path never taught them to recognize predators hiding in plain sight, and that's exactly why they were chosen for first contact. In her office later that evening, Jessica filed her own report, encrypted for the Joint Chief's eyes only. Initial deception successful. The Zaxrith remain unaware of humanity's true nature. Recommend proceeding with Phase 2 of cultural integration. The real hunt was just beginning. The Oklahoma Wildlife Reserve stretched endlessly before them, bathed in the golden light of sunset. Ranger Mike Thompson stood at the observation point, binoculars hanging casually around his neck as he gestured toward a distant herd of bison. Ambassador Velan found himself unconsciously shifting away from the human, though he couldn't quite explain why. Population management is crucial for maintaining ecosystem balance, Mike explained, his voice carrying the easy confidence of someone who'd spent decades in the wilderness. We have to ensure predator and prey numbers stay within optimal ranges. The word prey sent an involuntary shiver down Velan's spine. And your species manages this balance? He asked, his translator struggling to maintain a steady tone. Mike nodded, completely missing the ambassador's discomfort. Been doing it for generations. Every season, we calculate sustainable harvest numbers. Harvest. Velan's auxiliary stomach churned. Sure, for population control. Mike pulled out his tablet, displaying charts of wildlife statistics. See these numbers. Without proper management, the ecosystem would collapse. Someone has to make the hard decisions. The casual way the human discussed controlling life and death bothered Velan more than he cared to admit. Back in the shuttle that evening, he filed a brief report noting humanity's unusual comfort with biological intervention. Meanwhile, across the country at Atlanta's CDC, Dr. Amanda Hayes was creating her own ripples in the Zaxrith delegation's perception of humanity. She stood in her pristine lab, enthusiastically explaining human digestive capabilities to a group of alien scientists. Our enzyme production is remarkably efficient, she said, pointing to a holographic display of the human digestive system. We can process a wide variety of organic materials, breaking down complex proteins into complex proteins, interrupted Dr. Zeltic, the Zaxrith biochemist. You mean plant proteins? Amanda blinked, realizing too late her mistake. Well, yes, plant proteins, but also, what other proteins would there be? Zeltic asked, genuinely confused. The moment hung in the air as Amanda quickly recalibrated her presentation. Let's focus on our vegetable processing capabilities, she said smoothly, but the seed of unease had been planted. During the lunch break, Zeltic observed the human children playing in a park adjacent to the CDC. Something about their movements troubled him. The way they tracked moving objects, their perfect throwing motions, the instinctive way they pursued each other in games of tag. It all spoke to capabilities that seemed unnecessary for a purely civilized species. Remarkable coordination. He mentioned to his colleague, Dr. Kalin, have you noticed how every human child seems to possess these abilities? Kalin had been compiling her own observations. Their recreational activities all share common elements: pursuit, evasion, territorial control. Even their sports involve projectile weapons. Surely not weapons, Zeltic protested. They're just toys. Are they? Kalin pulled up footage from their cultural database. Look at this baseball. The throwing motion is precise enough to hit a target moving at high speed. The bat is essentially a club. Every game involves either claiming territory or pursuing a target. Back at the Wildlife Reserve, Velan was making his own disturbing connections. He watched Mike Thompson move through the terrain with practiced ease, noting how the human's eyes constantly scanned their surroundings, how he instinctively oriented himself toward escape routes and high ground. We've got a mountain lion in the area, Mike mentioned casually, checking his tracking device. Better stick close. A predator. Velon's throat sacs pulsed with anxiety. Shouldn't we leave? Mike laughed, patting the tranquilizer rifle slung across his back. Nothing to worry about. Humans are pretty good at handling predators. We've had lots of practice. That evening, the various Zaxrith observers shared their findings in a secure conference. Each report added to a growing picture that none of them wanted to acknowledge. The humans' agricultural prowess, their careful environmental stewardship, it all seemed to hide something deeper, more primal. They're hiding something, Velon concluded. But what could be worse than their comfort with managing death? Dr. Kalin's response chilled the room. Perhaps we should ask why a species needs such efficient protein processing enzymes when they claim to focus on plant cultivation. The cracks in humanity's carefully constructed facade were beginning to show, but none of the Zaxrith were prepared for the horror that lay beneath. The Library of Congress stood silent in the midnight hour, its marble halls illuminated only by the soft glow of data terminals. Kate Turner, junior xenoanthropologist for the Zaxrith Scientific Council, had specifically requested after-hours access. She found humans less distracting when they weren't around, though she couldn't quite explain why their presence made her nerve endings tingle. Her research had started innocently enough, a comparative study of agricultural development across species. But an odd reference in a historical text had caught her attention, something about hunting parties that didn't align with humanity's peaceful farmer image. Display Archaeological Record Section 47B. She commanded her holographic interface. Focus on pre-agricultural human societies. The images that materialized stopped her breath. Cave paintings spread across her display, showing groups of humans surrounding large animals. The formations were unmistakable, coordinated encirclement patterns, multiple angles of attack, synchronized group movement. "This can't be right," she whispered, her translator off, voice trembling in her native chirps. Cross-reference with military history. Her blood ran cold as the database compiled the results. The hunting formations in those ancient caves were nearly identical to modern human military tactical patterns. They hadn't abandoned their hunting behaviors. They'd refined them, perfected them, turned them into a science. A sound from outside drew her attention to the window. In the street below, a police tactical team was running a training exercise. Their movements mirrored the cave paintings with frightening precision. The same encirclement patterns, the same coordinated approach, evolved from hunting large prey to pursuing their own kind. Kate's hand shook as she dove deeper into the historical records. The evidence was overwhelming. Human children's games, training exercises for tracking and pursuit, sports, ritualized combat, and territory control. Even their music and dance often mimicked the rhythm of the hunt. Computer, analyze human dental structure across historical records. The results confirmed her worst fears. Humans weren't herbivores who had learned to farm. They were predators who had chosen to farm while maintaining all their hunting capabilities. The implications were staggering. A notification popped up on her screen. Someone else was accessing similar records from another terminal. Kate traced the signal to the Pentagon's Kinescience Division. Dr. Jessica Miller was also awake, monitoring Kate's research in real time. In her panic, Kate knocked over her tea. As she reached for cleanup supplies in her bag, something clattered to the floor. A small bone from her last meal, a traditional Zaxrith snack. The sound echoed through the quiet library. The security guard, Robert Mitchell, appeared almost instantly. His movement was silent, his approach calculated. Kate realized with horror that she was witnessing firsthand what her research had just revealed. A human naturally falling into predatory stalking behavior. "Everything all right, ma'am?" Robert asked, his friendly tone contrasting with his alert posture and scanning eyes. Yes, just clumsy," Kate managed, her translator struggling to maintain a steady tone. Robert's smile was genuine, but Kate now recognized something else in his stance, the perfect positioning for either attack or defense. Every human she'd met suddenly appeared in a new light. They were always watching, always ready, their civilized demeanor a thin veneer over deeply ingrained predatory instincts. As dawn approached, Kate compiled her report with trembling appendages. The evidence was irrefutable. Humanity's agricultural society wasn't a sign of pure civilized evolution. It was a choice made by predators intelligent enough to recognize the benefits of farming while maintaining their hunting capabilities. She included video clips that would horrify her superiors. Children playing tag, demonstrating innate pursuit instincts, sports teams executing complex group hunting strategies, military units performing maneuvers that would have served equally well for bringing down large prey millennia ago. Just before sending the report, a final document caught her eye, a philosophical text from ancient Greece. It discussed the human concept of restraint, the idea that true civilization wasn't about lacking dangerous capabilities, but choosing when not to use them. The implications chilled her to her core. Humanity hadn't stumbled into civilization like most species, gradually leaving their primitive natures behind. They had deliberately built their civilization while keeping their predatory skills sharp, a conscious decision that spoke to a level of strategic thinking her species had never needed to develop. As she transmitted the report, Kate watched the sunrise over Washington, D.C. Somewhere in the city, she heard the distant sound of a police siren, a hunting call that had evolved from ancient whoops and cries used to coordinate group pursuit. The sound followed her all the way back to her embassy, a reminder that beneath humanity's polite diplomatic smiles lay the heart of a species that had never forgotten how to hunt. The Las Vegas sphere pulsed with electric energy as cultural attaché Marvin settled into the luxury box alongside General James Walker. 80,000 humans filled the stadium for what they called Super Bowl Sunday, their collective excitement creating a low-frequency rumble that set his nerve endings on edge. "You're in for a treat," General Walker said, gesturing toward the field with his beer. Cowboys versus Eagles. Classic matchup. Both teams are apex predators in their divisions. Marvin's translator stumbled over the word predators, but before he could inquire further, the crowd erupted. 22 humans had emerged onto the field, their padded armor glinting under the stadium lights. Their movements were synchronized, purposeful, reminiscent of something Marvin had seen in nature documentaries but couldn't quite place. "Now watch this." Walker leaned forward, his eyes gleaming. "Eagles are running a spread offense. See how they're creating space, drawing the defenders out. Classic hunting strategy. Isolate your target from the herd." Marvin's auxiliary stomach churned as he began to see the patterns. The offensive line wasn't just blocking. They were coordinating like a pack to protect their quarterback. The receivers weren't simply running routes. They were executing flanking maneuvers that would have worked equally well for ancestral humans pursuing prey across prehistoric savannas. "Brilliant containment," Walker exclaimed as defenders collapsed on a running back. "Look at that pursuit angle." Textbook predatory response. The word pursuit triggered something in Marvin's memory. He'd read Kate Turner's classified report just that morning about human hunting behaviors. Now he was watching those same behaviors played out as entertainment, with each movement honed to lethal precision. "Your species does this for fun?" Marvin asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Fun. This is way more than fun. It's about territory, dominance, proving you're the apex." Walker caught himself, remembering his diplomatic briefing. "I mean, it's about athletic excellence and strategic thinking." But Marvin was already seeing beyond the sporting facade. The crowd's roar when a receiver was tackled wasn't just excitement. It was a predatory species celebrating a successful hunt. The cheerleaders' synchronized movements mimicked the group ceremonies ancient humans would perform before hunting parties. Even the marching band at halftime moved in formations that would have served perfectly for surrounding large prey. "Interesting how the defense adjusts their coverage," Walker continued, oblivious to Marvin's growing horror. "See that safety hanging back? He's reading the quarterback's eyes, anticipating the target's movement. Just like tracking prey through dense forest. You have to predict where they're going, not where they are." A timeout was called, and the massive screen showed slow-motion replays. Marvin watched in fascination and terror as the cameras captured something his species had evolved to fear. The focused gaze of predatory eyes, the explosive acceleration of pursuit, the coordinated group takedown. Those linebackers, Walker pointed proudly, trained specifically to improve their pursuit angles. Reaction time, spatial awareness, pack coordination. It's all instinct backed by years of practice. The halftime show began, and Marvin's cultural training kicked in as he recognized the song, Eye of the Tiger. The lyrics now took on a wholly different meaning. Humans didn't just preserve their predatory nature. They celebrated it in their art, their music, their entertainment. Notice how even the crowd moves as one, Walker remarked during a particularly exciting play. 80,000 people tracking a single ball, following complex strategic plays. Show this level of coordination to any other species in the galaxy. He trailed off as he realized his mistake, but Marvin had already made the connection. No herbivorous species could track fast-moving objects with such precision. No prey species could anticipate and react to complex group movements with such accuracy. They were watching more than a game. They were watching humanity's predatory nature refined into art. As the fourth quarter began, Marvin composed an urgent message to the Confederation. Human recreational activities are not simple sports. They are ritualized hunting behaviors performed for entertainment. Their children's games, their professional sports, even their celebration ceremonies all contain elements of predatory activity. Most disturbing is not that they possess these capabilities, but that they consider them entertaining. Recommend immediate reassessment of human integration timeline. The crowd suddenly erupted in a primal roar as a receiver broke free, sprinting for the end zone. Marvin watched in horrified fascination as 80,000 apex predators rose as one, their collective hunting cry echoing through the stadium. In that moment, he finally understood. Every human celebration was, in its own way, a celebration of the hunt. Ambassador Velon blamed the malfunctioning navigation unit for their current predicament, but deep down, he knew curiosity had guided his decision to enter the Capitol Grill instead of redirecting to Evergreen, Washington, D.C.'s premier vegan establishment. The elegant wood paneling and dim lighting created an atmosphere that felt simultaneously refined and somehow primal. Ambassador, what an unexpected pleasure. Senator Diana Reynolds rose from her nearby table, her crimson dress catching the subtle lighting. Please, join us. We were just about to begin dinner. Protocol demanded acceptance. Velon found himself guided to a seat at the senator's table, joined by his 3 staff members, all of whom were displaying subtle signs of stress, their neck frills twitching beneath their ceremonial collars. We were just discussing the new interstellar trade agreement. Senator Reynolds smiled, lifting what Velon's translator identified as a wine glass. Your timing is perfect. The waiter approached, and Velon noticed something odd about the knives laid out before each human. They were serrated, designed for. His thought process froze as Senator Reynolds began to order. I'll have the bone and ribeye, rare, she said casually, as if she hadn't just announced her intention to consume flesh. And please make sure it's warm in the center. Velon's universal translator must be malfunctioning. He watched in mounting horror as Reynolds' dining companions, all high-ranking trade officials, placed similar orders. Each specification was more terrifying than the last. Medium rare, blue rare, Pittsburgh style. And for our honored guests. The waiter turned to Velon. They'll have the vegetarian menu, Reynolds smoothly interjected, shooting the waiter a warning look. But it was too late. Velon had already seen the regular menu lying open at an adjacent table, its contents now searing into his memory. His third assistant, Kexty, couldn't contain his scientific curiosity. Senator, these preparation methods you mentioned. Therefore, the finest cuts of beef in Washington, Reynolds replied proudly. The Capitol Grill is famous for its dry aging process, 30 days minimum. The humans continued their trade discussion as if they hadn't just admitted to ritual flesh consumption. Velon watched, paralyzed, as the waiter returned with their appetizers. Senator Reynolds delicately lifted a fork and began consuming something called steak tartare. Raw flesh, Kexte whispered in their native tongue, his scientific detachment crumbling. They consume it raw. The horror deepened as Velon observed the humans' practiced movements. They weren't just eating. They were performing a ritual. The specialized cutting tools, the specific temperature preferences, the casual way they discussed marbling and tenderness. This wasn't just feeding. This was a culturally refined expression of their predatory nature. The secret is in the aging process. Bradley Thompson, the Commerce Secretary, explained enthusiastically. It breaks down the muscle fibers, enhances the flavor profile. Velon's translator gave up entirely on the phrase flavor profile of flesh, producing only a brief burst of static. He watched as the main courses arrived, each plate a testament to humanity's predatory heritage made manifest. Senator Reynolds cut into her ribeye with practiced precision, the pink center matching her lipstick almost exactly. You know, she mused, this reminds me of my grandfather's ranch in Montana. He taught me everything about proper meat preparation. The implications hit Velon like a gravity wave. This wasn't just a modern practice. It was generational knowledge, passed down through families. Humans didn't just hunt. They had developed an entire culture around the preparation and consumption of their prey. Would anyone care to try the wine pairing? Reynolds offered. It's a beautiful Cabernet, specifically chosen to complement the meat's richness. They had even developed specific plant-based beverages to enhance their flesh consumption. The level of cultural refinement built around predatory behavior was staggering. As the dinner progressed, Velon observed how the humans combined their predatory feeding with high-level diplomatic discussion. They negotiated trade deals while efficiently stripping flesh from bones. They discussed cultural exchange programs while sharing something called a porterhouse for two. His final report that evening was brief but urgent. Humanity hasn't merely preserved their predatory nature. They've elevated it to an art form. They don't simply consume flesh. They celebrate it. Most critically, they've maintained this behavior while simultaneously developing space travel and complex diplomatic systems. The implications for galactic security cannot be overstated. Later that night, in the safety of his embassy quarters, Velon realized the truth that would shake the Confederation. Humanity's technological advancement hadn't softened their predatory nature. Instead, they had dragged their hunter's heritage into the space age, refining and celebrating it rather than suppressing it. The elegant dinner had revealed something far more terrifying than simple predation. It had revealed predation elevated to culture. The Pentagon's evaluation chamber hummed with nervous energy as Colonel Tyler Jackson initiated the holographic display. The Zaxrith military observers, more ceremonial bureaucrats than warriors, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Their species had evolved running from threats, not confronting them, and something about this underground chamber triggered ancient instincts. Let's begin with basic training exercises, Jackson said, pulling up a three-dimensional representation of a Marine Corps obstacle course. Every human soldier starts here. Senior observer Melvin leaned forward, his analytical mind trying to make sense of the structures. These barriers, they seem unnecessarily complex for simple physical conditioning. Jackson smiled, a predator's grin that he quickly smoothed into something more diplomatic. Watch this demonstration. The hologram showed a squad of Marines navigating the course. They moved with fluid grace, scaling walls, crawling under barbed wire, leaping between platforms. What caught Melvin's attention wasn't just their efficiency, it was the haunting familiarity of their movements. Those climbing patterns, his junior analyst, Zextor, whispered. They matched the hunting behaviors documented in Turner's report. Jackson continued, unaware of their revelation. Every human child naturally develops these basic movement patterns. Military training just refines them. He switched the display to a playground scene. Notice any similarities? The observers watched in horror as human children demonstrated the same fundamental movements. Climbing, stalking, pouncing, coordinated group pursuit disguised as games like tag and capture the flag. You're training them from infancy, Melvin realized aloud. Training? No, Jackson chuckled. This is all natural behavior. Kids do this instinctively. We just channel it. The display shifted to a space combat simulation. Human pilots executed complex three-dimensional maneuvers that made the observer's head spin. Our natural predatory instincts give us an edge in space warfare, Jackson explained. The ability to track moving targets, predict trajectories, coordinate group attacks, it's all hardwired into our brains. Melvin watched as human fighters demonstrated attack patterns that were eerily similar to wolf pack hunting strategies. Even in the void of space, humans retained their predatory nature, adapting ancient hunting behaviors to modern warfare. Here's something interesting, Jackson said, pulling up a new simulation, our Special Forces training program. Notice how the squad moves through complex terrain. The observers noted with growing unease how the human soldiers naturally fell into hunting formations thousands of years old. Their movement patterns hadn't changed since their ancestors hunted massive prey across prehistoric plains. They'd just added modern technology. Each soldier instinctively understands their role in the pack. Excuse me, the squad, Jackson continued, his slip making Melvin's scales ripple with anxiety. Point man, flankers, rear guard. These positions mirror natural hunting behaviors. The briefing moved to psychological warfare, and the horror deepened. Humans didn't just hunt with their bodies, they hunted with their minds. They could predict enemy movements because they thought like predators. They could devise complex ambush strategies because their brains were wired for the hunt. This is how we train for urban combat, Jackson demonstrated, showing a tactical team clearing a building. Though honestly, most of these movement patterns come naturally to us. The training just refines our instincts. Melvin observed how each soldier maintained perfect situational awareness, their forward-facing eyes constantly scanning for threats and opportunities. Their species had evolved those eyes for hunting, and now they use that same depth perception for warfare. The most remarkable thing, Jackson noted proudly, is our ability to innovate new combat strategies. We're constantly developing new tactical approaches. That was what terrified Melvin most. The Zaxrith military hadn't developed new strategies in generations. They had achieved peace through stagnation. Humans, on the other hand, seemed to be in a constant state of tactical evolution. His final report to the Confederation Military Council was grim. Human military capability cannot be measured by their technology alone. Every member of their species possesses innate predatory skills that they maintain and refine throughout their lives. More concerning, they deliberately preserve their hunting instincts while developing new applications for them. Their children train through play, their sports reinforce group hunting tactics, and their military expertly channels these natural abilities into devastating combat effectiveness. As the briefing concluded, Jackson casually mentioned, we actually had to simplify a lot of our tactical doctrines for the presentation. Wouldn't want to overwhelm you with the more advanced concepts. Melvin realized with dawning horror that they hadn't been shown humanity's true capabilities. Like any good predator, humans were keeping their most lethal talents hidden, revealing only what they wanted their galactic neighbors to see. The grand chamber of the Galactic Confederation blazed with artificial sunlight as Deputy Director Rachel Martinez took the podium. Hundreds of Zaxrith representatives filled the stadium-style seating, their neck frills extended in collective anxiety. The past week's revelations about humanity's predatory nature had pushed the Confederation to the brink of severing diplomatic relations. Honored members of the Confederation, Rachel began, her calm voice belying the tension in the room. I stand before you not to deny humanity's nature, but to help you understand it. High Chancellor Voxthai's translator crackled as he responded, understanding. Your species has deceived us. Your predators masquerading as cultivators. Rachel nodded, acknowledging the accusation. We are both. That's what makes humanity unique." She gestured, and the chamber's holographic system activated. "Please, watch." The first image showed a human firefighter running into a burning building. "This is Michael O'Connor, Boston Fire Department." Using the same stamina and strength that our ancestors used to pursue prey, he charged into an inferno to save a family of strangers. The Zaxrith murmured uneasily as the scene played out. The firefighter's movements were indeed predatory, quick, precise, powerful, but the purpose was purely protective. Next, Rachel continued. Dr. Sarah Walker, trauma surgeon. The display showed a human female performing complex surgery. The same hand-eye coordination that made us deadly hunters now saves lives daily. Our predatory focus and pattern recognition help us diagnose diseases and perform microscopic procedures. Chancellor Voxthai interrupted. "These are merely adaptations of hunting behaviors." "Exactly," Rachel agreed, surprising him. "But isn't that the point? We've taken our predatory capabilities and chosen new applications for them. Look at our search and rescue teams." The display shifted to show mountain rescue operations. The same tracking skills that helped us hunt now help us find lost hikers. Our ability to predict movement patterns lets us locate disaster survivors. Our pack hunting instincts have evolved into coordinated emergency response teams. From the upper tier, Science Minister Kellepore countered. "Yet you maintain your combat capabilities. Your children still practice hunting behaviors." Rachel's expression softened. "We maintain them because the galaxy is not always kind." She brought up new footage. Human peacekeepers protecting refugee camps, Coast Guard ships rescuing stranded vessels, disaster relief teams delivering supplies through hostile terrain. Every skill that makes us predators also makes us protectors. We track not just to hunt, but to find those who are lost. We pursue not just prey, but also knowledge and understanding. We coordinate not just for attack, but for rescue and relief. The chamber erupted in overlapping arguments. Rachel waited for the translators to catch up before continuing. "Yes, we could have hidden these abilities. We could have pretended to be something we're not. But we chose honesty because true cooperation requires understanding." She pulled up her final piece of evidence, historical records of human philosophical debates about violence and power. For thousands of years, we've grappled with our nature. We've developed complex ethical systems, laws, and cultural practices to guide the use of our capabilities. We're predators who choose when not to hunt. We're warriors who choose to protect rather than dominate. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. Humanity hadn't stumbled into civilization despite their predatory nature. They had achieved it while fully aware of their capabilities, making conscious choices about their use. "Look at your own records," Rachel challenged them. "In the 3 months since first contact, has humanity initiated a single act of aggression? We've shared technology, engaged in trade, and respected every cultural boundary. We're not asking you to ignore what we are. We're asking you to understand what we choose to be." The debate raged for hours. Some representatives demanded immediate quarantine of Earth. Others argued that humanity's conscious choice to use their predatory skills for protection made them valuable allies. The deadlock broke when a junior delegate asked a simple question. If humanity wanted to deceive us, why reveal their nature at all? Why not continue the charade? Rachel's response crystallized the issue. Because true allies don't hide their nature, they demonstrate how they choose to use it. As the session concluded, Chancellor Voxthai made a stunning admission. Perhaps we've been asking the wrong question. Instead of fearing what humanity is capable of, we should consider what they've chosen to do with those capabilities. The crisis wasn't over, but understanding had begun to replace fear. Humanity's predatory nature was no longer a dark secret, but a complex reality that the galaxy would have to learn to accept, and perhaps even rely upon. The Emergency Response Center beneath the Confederation Capitol buzzed with frantic activity as Admiral Marcus Sterling studied the holographic display. The mechanical swarm had already consumed 3 outlying Zaxrith colonies, their robotic efficiency matching their complete lack of mercy. The Zaxrith fleet, designed for peaceful exploration, had scattered at first contact. Their attack pattern is perfect, Ambassador Velon observed, his voice trembling. No wasted movement, no hesitation, no emotion, Marcus finished, his eyes tracking the swarm's movement. They're machines. They don't feel fear, doubt, or mercy. But that's also their weakness. The gathered Confederation representatives watched as Marcus began manipulating the tactical display. His movements had the fluid grace of a predator. And for once, that fact brought comfort rather than fear to the assembled aliens. Look here, he pointed to the swarm's formation. They're efficient, but predictable. They follow optimal paths because they're programmed for perfection. But nature isn't perfect. It's adaptable. Chancellor Voxthai stepped forward. What are you suggesting, Admiral? Marcus smiled, and this time none of the aliens flinched at the predatory gleam in his eyes. I'm suggesting we hunt them. Not as machines fighting machines, but as predators hunting prey. The tactical display shifted as Marcus laid out his plan. The human fleet would split into hunting packs, using the same techniques that their ancestors had developed to bring down animals many times their size. The mechanical swarm might be powerful, but they lacked the one thing that made predators truly dangerous: creativity. We'll use their perfection against them, Marcus explained. They'll expect optimal responses, perfect formations. Instead, they'll face organized chaos. Some ships will act as bait, drawing them into prepared killing zones. Others will circle and harass, like wolves wearing down larger prey. The Zaxrith military observers watched in fascination as human naval officers fell into roles as old as their species: spotters, flankers, pursuit groups. The same behaviors that had once terrified the Confederation were now being deployed in their defense. Your entire fleet already knows these maneuvers, Velon asked, amazed. It's instinct, Marcus replied. Every human understands pack hunting at a genetic level. We just adapt it to new circumstances. The first engagement proved his words true. The mechanical swarm, expecting standard military formations, found itself instead facing what appeared to be chaos. Human ships broke formation seemingly at random, only to reform in unexpected patterns. They didn't behave like a military force. They behaved like hunters. In the command center, Velon watched the tactical display with new understanding. The human ship's movements, which once seemed terrifying, now appeared beautiful in their complexity. Each feint and strike echoed behaviors that humans had perfected over millions of years. Notice how they're forcing the swarm to expend extra energy, Marcus pointed out. Classic hunting technique. Wear down the stronger prey through sustained pursuit. These machines may not tire physically, but they do consume energy. The battle unfolded over 3 days. The human fleet never engaged in direct confrontation, instead picking apart the swarm's formation through constant harassment and calculated strikes. They used stellar phenomena as natural terrain, setting up ambushes in asteroid fields and using solar flares to mask their movements. On the final day, as the last of the mechanical swarm fell into a carefully prepared trap, Chancellor Voxthai turned to Marcus. You knew, didn't you? When you first contacted us, you knew the galaxy would need predators. Marcus nodded solemnly. We've spent our entire history learning to balance our predatory nature with ethics and civilization. Now we can put those skills to use protecting others. The victory celebration that followed was subdued by Zaxrith standards, but marked by a new understanding. They watched as human crews performed their traditional victory rituals, recognizing now that the displays of coordinated movement and symbolic aggression were part of a complex cultural framework that had turned ancient hunting behaviors into something more. In his final report to Earth, Admiral Sterling wrote, "The Confederation has formally requested a permanent human military presence in their space. They've realized that in a dangerous galaxy, sometimes you need predators on your side." Our hunting grounds have expanded to include the stars themselves, but our basic nature remains unchanged. We are predators who choose to protect, hunters who defend their pack, and the galaxy is slowly learning to thank us for it. Ambassador Velan, watching human ships patrol Confederation space, finally understood the old Earth saying, "The only thing more dangerous than a predator is a predator with a purpose." Humanity had found its purpose among the stars, not as conquerors, but as guardians, using their ancient hunting skills to protect those who could not protect themselves.